say the student is getting tested in specific learning disability, any assessment or report that a teacher has done that shows a student is below grade level will be specified here. And then this is just any extra factors that may factor into it. And then here, this will be where you'll be able to contact your special education teacher. And this is just where you say, I consent, I do not consent, and then your signature. Then there's some more information here about extending the 25-day timeline for completing the evaluation, which is most often not used. Then we go to looking at this main determination of eligibility. So this is where we're actually going to be writing that the child is eligible or not eligible. So here we're same information, we're telling what we were doing, and then we're writing the test that we gave, the dates, and then the tests that were, what the results were of those tests. These tests are usually done by the special education teacher or by the school psychologist. It depends on how large a school district is. Now here we can see we're inserting our suspected disability category sheets. So each category has its own document, and I will quickly, we can look here at, we'll look at SLD, specific learning disability. So this would be inserted into this eligibility form, and what they look like is just how the assessments were done. So for SLD, we have to say whether they are meeting these needs adequately, whether we're using a discrepancy or an RTI model, which most of the time RTI is not used in South Dakota. We're not a big RTI state. And then all of these pieces will need to be filled out. So for each disability category, there are different pieces of information that need to be inputted. So once you have inputted that, then we put it into this document, which is what we believe they may be eligible for. Then we just say that no, it's not because of lack of instruction or limited English proficiency. If they have a diagnosed disability, and then what those adverse effects are. And then this here is also where we check the category that will be reported on the student count. And then down here we're just saying, do they need OT, PT, language pathology, and then whether they need transition, which is not needed until after a student is over the age of 16. And then lastly, you will be given the meeting notice, which will be sent home with you to say that you have set up a meeting to discuss the results of the evaluation, which will be checked here, and then who will all be there. If there's someone else you want to have or the school wants to have, they'll have to ask you for consent. And then also just more about those parental rights that you have the opportunity to engage in. And then just a signature to acknowledge whether you will be there, not be there, or whether you will attend over the phone. At the end of this whole process, you will receive another one of these parental prior written notice with more information added to it about what happened. And then you will get a copy of both those psych report results from the school psychologist, as well as the IEP in the mail or in your child's backpack, whatever way you decide is the best. Now that your child has been assessed and referred, you will go on to discuss the individual education program, which is referred to as the IEP in the special education world. The first thing that you'll notice at the top is that it asks for all of your information and your child's information. This is more for the state to ensure that the school has kept track of all of these things and this child is a student of the school. Next, you'll notice that there are positions for dates. The most important one includes the annual review date, the date of eligibility, and the 3-year evaluation. After this IEP is put into place, you will have a review every year and a re-evaluation every 3 years. So you should be having a review over the IEP to discuss goals every single year. It's extremely important to make sure that not only are you holding the school accountable, but that you're holding yourself accountable to follow up and make sure that your child is getting what they need. You'll also see that there's a spot where they talk about the purpose of the meeting. For this case, most of the time this will be an initial eligibility or an annual review, sometimes a 3-year evaluation if you're at that point. Below are some important check boxes that your special education teacher should have checked first, but then will require a parent to signature. This shows that you discuss the evaluation results and the assessment methods, that you got a copy of the results, and that the student is eligible or not eligible for special education, and then that you received that copy of the parent-guardian rights that we discussed previously. Another important piece is where it says primary disability. This is extremely important to make sure that this is the right category here, more for the school district, because this is how they will get the funding to help educate your son or daughter. The next piece of the plan is basically who is on the team and who is a member. This will be a signature and a date. There could be multiple people on this list who are there or who are not there. People can attend over the phone or in class. The next piece is the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, also known as PLAF. This is basically your students' strengths and their weaknesses or their concerns based on the results of the initial or the most recent evaluation of your student. At the bottom, this should also include how the student's disability is affecting their involvement and progress in the curriculum, as well as if your student is in preschool, how the disability affects the student's participation in appropriate activities, since this may not all be academic. There will also be an area down here where there should be some parent input information. The next piece is a consideration of special factors. Limited English proficiency, special communication needs, so this would be especially important in those deaf blindness categories, those hearing loss categories, and those vision loss categories, and sometimes in other health impairment. Requiring Braille, the behavior impeding his or her learning or that of others. This is especially important under the autism category and under emotional disturbance, as well as sometimes under other health impairment, if it includes ADD or ADHD. And then, does the student require assistive technology devices and services? This can also vary on what category this goes under, but this is just important to note whether a device is necessary or not. Next is just physical education, whether it's regular, not required, or adaptive. And then hearing aid maintenance, if they fall under the deaf blindness or under the hearing loss categories, this may be an issue. And then this is the assessment. So this would be any state or district-wide assessment, and this is whether they're going to take it with or without accommodations. In the state of South Dakota, the rule is that only 1% of your school district can complete the alternative assessment, which means that if your school is fairly small, there may not be a large amount of opportunity for a student to take an alternative assessment, but this is often accommodated by your special education teacher. So it is important to note that in the second checkbox, there is the alternative assessment spot, and this is most often for students who are working on alternative achievement standards and have a cognitive disability. It's extremely hard to get a student in an alternative assessment if they don't have a cognitive disability. And then the last section is whether there's no state or district-wide assessments, which may come into play if a student is under the 3rd grade and these assessments are not utilized. The next piece is just over the measurable annual goals that your student may have. The first part is listed the goal, so the biggest box should be where the goal is listed. These goals should be under each category that your student was placed within on their present levels of academic performance. So every spot there that had a concern should have some sort of a goal. Then the next part is those process codes, which you can see, or procedure codes, which you can see down here. So that's including whether it's a teacher-made test, observations, weekly tests, unit tests, student conferences, work samples, portfolios, oral tests, data response, or other. And then the next section is the date, so the date that these have been worked on, and then the progress code. So you'll see down there it says progress being made is insufficient progress to meet goal. X is not addressed this reporting period, or M, met goal. And then over here are just any comments that the teacher would like to leave about how the student is doing and progressing. And then lastly is that box is reporting frequency to parents and reporting methods. So this will be whether it's quarterly or trimester reports, which it often is trimester because that goes along with conferences. But if you have a student who needs serious academic gains, you might decide to do these more frequently, as well as how you would like that report to be done. Whether it be face-to-face with a conference, a goal page copy that gets sent home, or just a normal report card. And then here's another version of this that includes the short-term instructional objectives or benchmarks. These are required for students who are taking an alternative assessment. And down here are the accommodations and modifications. So this is extremely important to ensure that everything that your child needs to be accommodated is filled out here. So just double checking and making sure the special education teacher got all of the things needed. This could be anything from a paraprofessional within the classroom, or needing alternative seating, or being pulled out for tests. All of those are included under this category. And then this is just if you have a student who maybe has severe needs or needs help, like maybe with a feeding tube. This allows for you to give the school support, the paraprofessionals or the teacher who works with the student, to be able to get the training they need in order to serve your child correctly. And then we discussed more about the state and district-wide assessments. Now this is the spot where if your child is not using an accommodation, then you will not need to put anything in here. But if your child is completing the assessment with an accommodation, all those accommodations must be listed here. So as you can see, they have the Smarter Balanced, and any accommodation that is listed above, you can list down in here. So you must make sure that these are filled out correctly, otherwise the student will not receive that accommodation on the test. Then down here is the description of services. So if you want your child to be pulled out for reading for 30 minutes a day, this is where this will go. And then it includes a location, whether that's going to be the resource room or the general education classroom. This could also be if a student receives paraprofessional education in the back of the classroom. This would be listed here as well. And then any related services that your child may need, if they need speech or language, PT, OT, transportation, anything like that is listed down here as well as how much time is involved in that. And then this is the least restrictive environment. So this is basically where the environment that your student learns the most appropriately. This is where they will be placed for a bulk of their classroom time. So here you see that there's general classroom with modifications, the resource room, self-contained classroom, separate day school, residential facility, home/hospital. Most often we will fall between those first two categories, with general classroom with modifications and the resource room. And then it includes where your child will be put for different extracurricular activities like art, music, and counseling and meals. And most of the time those are also going to be in participation with their non-disabled peers. And then down there is a justification for placement. So this is basically just an explanation of why we chose the category we chose. So if we chose the resource room, we would do general education classroom with modifications, reject, because we chose to reject that, and then we would say why we rejected that. And then we would use the resource room, accept, and then why we chose to accept that for your child. Lastly, this is the extended school year or ESY services. This is basically needed, not needed, or to be determined. And then you would fill in what that goal number was, the service, your dates, and then the minutes per week. Then you also have to provide some sort of reasoning why you chose to do ESY, which is usually because of skill retention and the lack thereof. So this is kind of an IEP at a glance. Now that your child has been assessed and referred, you will go on to discuss the individual education program, which is referred to as the IEP in the special education world. The first thing that you'll notice at the top is that it asks for all of your information and your child's information. This is more for the state to ensure that the school has kept track of all of these things and this child is a student of the school. Next, you'll notice that there are positions for dates. The most important one includes the annual review date, the date of eligibility, and the 3-year evaluation. After this IEP is put into place, you will have a review every year and a re-evaluation every 3 years. So you should be having a review over the IEP to discuss goals every single year. It's extremely important to make sure that not only are you holding the school accountable, but that you're holding yourself accountable to follow up and make sure that your child is getting what they need. You'll also see that there's a spot where they talk about the purpose of the meeting. For this case, most of the time this will be an initial eligibility or an annual review, sometimes a 3-year evaluation if you're at that point. Below are some important check boxes that your special education teacher teacher should have checked first, but then will require a parent to signature. This shows that you discuss the evaluation results and the assessment methods, that you got a